Welcome to the starting lineup for Week 11, and it is a big week, Andrew. A lot of teams playing 2 games this week, so you can make up a lot of ground in the overall standings. If you're not in a head-to-head league, obviously, you can make up ground in your league as well. We have to mention, last week we asked a poll on the site. Which of these forwards would you want to have on your fantasy team going into the weekend? Ryan Johnson, Claudio Bieler, Jack McInerney, or Chris Wondolowski? And the poll said...
Well, the poll said Ryan Johnson at 48%. The majority going with him. Actually, I went with Ryan Johnson. I captained him. I paid for that decision. Jack McInerney also not getting it done for me. But if you were one of the owners that picked Claudio Bieler, just 23% you reaped the rewards of a brace. He got back off the schneid and got going for Sporting Kansas City.
All right, let's get to a couple of questions. And because it is a double week, there are a lot going to be related to that. And the first question is it worth starting anyone who's not playing 2 matches in this week?
Well, I'll go back to my team. Personally, I am not starting anyone that's not playing 2 matches. I was able to make it happen by just taking a negative 8-point deduction. I think that's worth it based on the potential reward there. You have to remember, your opponents, if they're on top of their games, which I hope you are if you're watching this show, they probably have a lineup full of double fixtures as well. So if you don't have that, make sure you do it. But don't sacrifice it for future weeks. Make sure you're still thinking about the future ahead.
Yeah, and of course, LA and Philadelphia play 2 games next week. So it's another reason I have Jack McInerney on my bench as well. All my starters playing 2 games this week. Another question coming in is, should I use my wild card to take advantage of this double fixture week?
Well, we'll go back to that 8-point differential, or deduction, I should say. I took that 8-point deduction because I think that can make the difference for my team. I don't think that if you're in a position where you need more than 2 extra transfers, I'd say that's the time to use your wild card. Otherwise, roll with it. If you have all those guys on double fixtures, you can make that up. The risk reward there is pretty high. Another thing to remember, though, you have 2 wild cards. One can be used at any time. If you use that this week, you will only be able to use that second wild card between rounds 20 and 25. So you really need to look at the schedule and think about what benefits you most right now.
All right, a lot of decisions to be made on this very important fantasy week. So that brings us to O Captain, my captain.
Well, I've been burned once before, and you may have as well if you took my advice on James and Olave. Not this week. Graham Zusi is getting the armband for me. He is the best player in the game, and if you're not captaining him, that's just a silly mistake. Moving on to number 2, Matt Hedges in Dallas. You look at their schedule, very, very good this week. 2 at home. They've only given up 2 goals all season at home, and that was in 1 game. He is an easy choice as a goal threat on set pieces as well. Number 3, the second best player in the game, Aurelien Collen, Sporting Kansas City. They have a favorable schedule. If they can get it done in Houston, he is going to have a huge point total this weekend. And then last but not least, Bobby Boswell at DC. You would expect a shutout with the way United are playing right now. And then they've had Kansas City's number at BBVA Compass Stadium. Look for him to have a big week as well.
I'm going to keep this pretty simple because I agree with Andrew. Graham Zusi, best player in the game. He's your captain if he's on your team. If he's not, you better have someone from Dallas's back line. I'm going with Raul Fernandez first. I think he's possibly going to have 2 shutouts this week. Dallas doesn't give up goals at home. 2 goals all season. They were in 1 game against Houston. Then I'm sticking with Dallas on the back line. Matt Hedges, he gets a ton of points. Michel, he gets a ton of points. One of these guys has to be your captain. All right, now getting back into fan questions, and this one we got from a lot of people. They're saying, what happened to Matt Beasler last week? Something tells me he damaged some fantasy teams out there.
Yeah, I'm sure he did. What happened is on the Saturday before that game, he had a little bit of an MCL strain, still receiving treatment this week. He's a guy that, although he's been very productive this year, he should probably not be on your team this week. All indications are that he will not play midweek against Seattle. Iko Para likely stepping in. One guy who could play, however, though, Kai Kamara, he is back in the fantasy game. He is going to be in the 18, according to Peter Vermees. $9.5 million, although I would say wait and see. See what he does, see what his role will be. Will he even be around for long term there in Kansas City?
All right, next question coming in is about another forward making an impact, and that is Adam John out in San Jose. The question is he now a regular starter? Remember that this week, Steven Lenhart and Alan Gordon are suspended for the Wednesday game, but both can return on Saturday.
Well, I would expect him, of course, to start on Wednesday, but I do not think that you'll see him on Saturday. If you're Frank Yallop and you've got both of the Bash brothers returning, you have to think one of those guys is going to get the nod ahead of Adam John. He's been great so far. If you're short on options, need somebody at a price point that he's in, go with him, but do not expect him to play 2 games.
Yeah, the one thing I would say is with Gordon and Lenhart both coming out from being out for a few games, it's possible that even if one of them gets the start in the second game, John ends up getting a substitute appearance. So that's a game and a game and a half, a game and a quarter out of him, better than nothing if that's what you need as far as your budget is concerned. Moving on to the question for this week, who is the best goalkeeper overall in fantasy this week? And I gave you my choice before. I think Raul Fernandez, by far and away, is the goalkeeper to have this week.
Yeah, I'm going to jump on the Raul Fernandez bandwagon as well, with Jimmy Nielsen and Tally Hall close seconds. But you look at that schedule for FC Dallas, 2 home games. They have been amazing at home this year. It's an easy decision. You go with Raul Fernandez and probably reap the rewards.
All right, a lot of Portland players on teams from the last couple of weeks, especially with that home game against New England. Did not work out for the Portland owners, but this next question comes in from Rudy Urquiza. He says, I have Valeri, Will Johnson, Ryan Johnson, but I also have Dallas defenders. Which do I go with?
Well, I'm in a bit of a predicament here myself. I actually have Michel and Matt Hedges on my team, while also fielding Ryan Johnson and Diego Valeri. My hope is that over this 2-game span, even if Dallas shuts them down in that first game, they'll go back home against Chivas USA and explode. Maybe make up for that potential lack of production in game 1. I think you have to balance your interests there. Certainly, there's risk and reward with them, but I think over the 2-game span, both sides are going to come out on top.
I agree with Andrew. I think you're starting all of those players. I am as well, including Rodney Wallace on my team to add to Wiebe's 4 guys. Final question coming in, and it's an interesting one, from Sean Monaghan, who says Javier Morales or Brad Davis. Remember, Brad Davis coming back from the red card suspension. Javier Morales has now come back as a regular starter since he was injured. So this is going to bring us to a transfer matchup.
I'll get this one started, Jason. I think the decision is, while not simple, pretty straightforward. You look at Brad Davis' schedule this week at DC, a team that is leaking goals right now. He is rested. Remember, that suspension ruled him out for last weekend's game. He's going to come back motivated. He's going to come back with fresh legs. And then Sporting Kansas City and Houston. Yes, their defense is one of the best in the league, but we've seen how good Houston is at home. We've seen they've had Kansas City's number at home. I would go with Brad Davis myself.
All right, I'm going to say Javier Morales, and here's why. Since he came back from that injury and he's been playing regularly, the last 4 games, he has 31 points. He is blowing up. Not only is he providing in the midfield and winning a lot of balls, but he is getting all the way forward in the attack and finding himself in front of goal. I understand that his 2 games are on the road this weekend, but Real Salt Lake is not going to sit back. That's not what they do on the road. Javier Morales is a perfect choice for this week. That's all we have for a starting lineup this week. Want to make sure you all know starting lineup will be back next Tuesday ahead of the Wednesday matchup between Philadelphia and Los Angeles. I hope you enjoy the weekend. I hope you have a lot better luck than I did last weekend. See you next week.